Today, we are in the territory of later life entrepreneurship, specifically what it takes to back yourself financially and emotionally when the stakes are real. At some point, the question of risk versus security stops being theoretical. My guest, Razia Aziz, left a stable career in '96 because she was bored and she wanted to be a singer. And then accidentally, she built a 30-year consultancy career while also training as a counselor, a coach, an interfaith minister, a bodywork practitioner, a death doula, while recording 3 albums along the way, as you do. I'm Ildiko Seely, your routine and performance strategist, feeling almost intimidated by Razia's achievements. But here on Routine is Revenue, we examine how the foundations you build inside yourself translate into how you perform, sustain, and grow your business. So, Razia, we are talking about risk versus security. Now, you in particular were very young in 1996, and it may not even have been on your radar at the time, but you actually left employment because you were bored, as you told me before. But how did that singing career that got you out of the burnout, and how did you accidentally build a 30-year career that you never even planned?
Oh, well, that's a great story. I'm just one of these people who is loves doing so many different things. And I've always sung since I was a little girl, and I'd been to university. I had done, outstanding first degree, distinguished second degree, started a PhD, dumped the idea of being an academic. And I was working in organizations and I was just getting so bored. Um, Various kind of public sector, voluntary sector jobs. And what I really loved doing was singing. And so I decided that in order to be a singer, for some reason in my head, it wasn't compatible with a day job. I don't know how that makes sense. I don't think it does
Well,
make sense.
when you want to
And
pursue a creative career, I suppose it does to some extent.
yeah. So, I was 31 at the time, and I gave up my job. And it happened that my partner at the time was a freelance trainer, and doing work around race equality, doing work around sexual abuse, and other kinds of work with organizations. And I thought I could do that. So we sort of teamed up as a way
That's
of making a living.
really interesting because I was going to ask you, like, was it recklessness or was it actually the most rational decision you ended up making?
Well, you see, it was just the natural thing to do because we were together, we lived together, and we had, very, very similar outlook on life. And it was great to do work which channeled my kind of activism and passion for equity, and inclusion, as we now call it. At that time, it was different language,
It was
into
diversity and
something that I got paid for. I mean, and at the same time, I was my own boss. I think one of the reasons I got bored was I hated being stuck in organizational systems with meetings and a boss and somebody telling you what you're supposed to be doing that you weren't really that interested in. And here I was doing something where I didn't have a boss. We worked together. There was a partnership and we were doing things we believed in. So what could be better? I had time to do my creative work and, all seemed to be going along swimmingly.
that almost sounds perfect, really.
Yeah.
But now, some years, perhaps decades down the line, what does risk
Yes.
versus security look like to you as a later life entrepreneur?
When you say it sounds perfect, when I look back, it kind of was, and then the kind of this great meteorite crashed into my life when my partner died very suddenly. When I approach the question of risk versus stability, I start from I start at the end. The end is you're going to die at some point. Your
Mm.
life is limited to an extent you don't know. And because my partner died and she was only 40 and I was only 33, it wasn't supposed to happen.
No.
So it wasn't supposed to happen. We worked together, we lived together, we were even in those early days when it was unusual for same-sex couples to kind of go forward and have children. We were planning to have children together. And it all ended abruptly because she died very suddenly. And I think for me, when I think about risk versus stability, this kind of spiritual wisdom that actually crosses it's across different faiths and spiritual traditions that says, do for this world as if you were going to live for 1,000 years, but do for the next world as if you were going to die today. And I've actually looked that up online, and I found that wisdom pops up in many, many different, not just faith traditions, but philosophical traditions. So it's not about religion as such. It's
Mm,
this existential tension in our lives between knowing intellectually, and most of us are in denial about it, that we could die any day. So at the same time as knowing that we could live a very long time and we could be planting seeds for decades ahead. And
absolutely.
it's a tension. It's not something anybody can resolve because nobody has that crystal ball that tells you what's going to happen with your life.
No, not at all. And it's kind of like there's
Yeah.
this weird calculation that why is it so much weightier in your 40s, 50s, 60s to look at this
Mm.
than it was when you were younger?
Yes. And it would have been for me if I hadn't had that experience at the age of
Mm,
33. And my father had only died 7 years earlier. So death became a really important teacher for me at that time. And it helped me understand that if you start at the end, if you go to the end of your life, wherever that might be, and you look back, what are the things you're going to regret? And there's actually research about this. So research shows that um, people who know they're going to die, the regrets that they have are all about um, having prioritized other things over their important relationships and their personal fulfillment.
yeah.
Maybe what their parents told them to do, or what society said was right, or what they felt pressured by their peers to do, or what they had internalized as what is success. That those things had become more important in their lives than either personal fulfillment, like really deep self care and examination of one's real purpose for being here,
So
but
why,
also your important relationships and whether you've given them any attention at all.
in your experience, why do you think that perfectly capable people and experienced people stay in roles that just doesn't fulfill them?
Yeah, and you see, that's what I've never been able to do. So I've always been somebody I couldn't stay in an organization for more than 2 years without getting incredibly bored.
Yeah.
And maybe I'm a bit atypical that way. Maybe it's about my wiring. But I just felt I was always hungry to try and realize some deeper purpose that was happening for me. So when I stand back and I ask, I think what I've learned over the years is that the human being is most attached to habit. And this is where the work you've been doing is so incredibly um, apt, because the fact is that we love a habit, and even if that habit harms us, once we get into a customary way of doing something or a customary way of thinking, we would rather stick with that than go through the discomfort of groundlessness, of having to remake ourselves and having to face uncertainty. I think I always went towards uncertainty with a lot of energy, and I also realize now that that was a habit.
That's really
And
interesting. And yeah, how do we then identify those habits that don't actually serve us? And then at what point do we realize the real cost of sticking with the security? Or it could actually just be a perceived security over our
yes,
ambitions. What is the
yes,
cost of
100%.
that?
I think there's a fundamental thing that we have as humans, and which is that we have this faculty for wondering where we came from, what we're here for, and where we're going to go when our bodies turn to dust. That desire to know is there, I think, in every single human being. It doesn't matter whether they're atheist, agnostic, they're person of faith, they're what philosophy, right wing, left wing, black, white, male. Everybody has this thing in them, which is, where have I come from? Why am I here? What's the purpose of my life? Where am I going? And we habits of the overculture of our training, programming, what our parents taught us, our schooling, they try to beat this curiosity out of us
Mm.
or provide us with pre-made answers. And the fact is, you came into this life on your own, and you will go out on your own, and in between it's an incredible journey. It's so many things could happen in that journey, so many things that are unpredictable, that have never happened to anybody else, because nobody ever has been you. And the cost of choosing that sort of stability that doesn't fulfill you, over the wide open mystery of who you really are, is, I think it's the highest cost. It's the spiritual cost. It's more than money. It's more than wealth. It's more than even relationships, because it's a profound sense of why on earth you're here in the first place. My problem is the opposite one, which is that I've always been concerned about that, and I've not taken care properly of that more mundane, more routine, more boring thing. And as I get older, these two things are coming together.
If you were listening to this thinking this is exactly where I get stuck, that is not accidental. You have the business strategies, but leaking energy and focus through weak personal health routines. This is the work I do privately with business owners who are ready to build their routines so their business can run without it costing them their health. Are you of Indian origin, if I remember right? Is that correct?
Yes. Now,
Hang on.
I
This
would
is
say
just, I
yes.
just want to ask you a
Yes,
question, but I just wanted to clarify that before I
completely.
say it.
100%. I'm
Yeah.
of Indian origin, but I just want to say in brackets that both of my parents were born in India before it was partitioned into Pakistan, Bangladesh.
How did it affect you when you were growing up? That, if I know it right, so in India, parents tend to, obviously we've got arranged marriages, then they tell their children what university to go to, what to study. It's part of the culture to map out their children's lives. How did that affect you, or what's your view on that?
I think I would challenge that, because I would say that India is a vast, it's not called a subcontinent for no reason.
It's a
And
vast country, indeed,
it,
indeed.
it's a country that could contain like a dozen different countries. And so to say that there is one culture of parents dictating to their children what they should do, I think is a really vast oversimplification, if I
Okay.
might say so. And that the family I grew up in didn't do that. I have to say, I never ever had the experience of my parents telling me what I should do when I grew up.
Well,
Ever.
that in itself is wonderful, actually. Like the other day, I went to the
Yes.
hospital for an appointment, and there was a young man, an Indian origin young man, and I was asking him, like, what stage of his doctorate studies he's in, and he said he's doing his departmental, but I could tell that he was so bored and so didn't want to be there. And I said, "What made you choose this?" And he just sort of shrugged his shoulders, and I looked at him like, "Well, your parents," and he went like,
Yes, and I have to say, my father, and it's an interesting story. My father was the eldest son in his family, and his father told him that he had to be a doctor. It was, I mean, he was born in 1921, okay, but his father, and many, that would have happened maybe in many places in the world in 1921. But his father said to him, "You're the eldest son. You're going to be a doctor." My father wanted to be a poet.
"Oh, bless."
and 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 basically it was, become a doctor or you'll be on the street.
Oh my.
You know, I'm not going to support you. Become a
So,
doctor, and that's it. So he had to do that, and he had to
well,
marry.
he
Yes,
chose
and
that
he had
security of the family, but then did he have the choice to choose the risk?
no
Maybe he
welfare
did.
state, no unemployment benefit. If he was on the street, he was on his own. You know, it happens from generation to generation. But my mother's family was completely different.
Okay.
So my grandfather on my mother's side said that all of his children, whether they were boys or girls, needed to have their own profession and own their own home and have their own money. And that's what my mum grew up with. And that's what I grew up with. And my parents came from very, very different. They were different religions. They spoke different languages. They couldn't actually have been culturally more different within India than my
How
mum and my
interesting that yet they came together and they spent a lifetime together.
spent a lifetime together. And you see, that's where my family is very diverse. It has people of different faiths, different colors, different religion, different outlook, different
Mm.
politics. And so I grew up in a multi-faith, multilingual, politically diverse family that moved continents. And that is natural and normal for me. That's one of the reasons, obviously, why diversity is so close to my heart.
That gives you an incredible amount of wealth of knowledge and experience, which sadly, like the vast majority of people, don't experience. How do you bring that back into your practice? How do you work with
Mm,
clients who face all sorts of tensions in their own life when they have to choose between risk and security? Like, there's,
yeah,
especially in later life, doesn't even have to be entrepreneurship, but if somebody is in employment and they have to face pension and so on, and then
yes,
they've got the cost of life still happening. Um, how do
yes,
you help them find a way forward, and
yes.
balance that risk and security?
So fundamentally, for me, there are certain principles that are essential to your personal success, and that is defined by you. So success may not all be, and wealth itself may not be measured entirely in money. As you
Mm.
said, there was a wealth of experience. There's a wealth. There's wealth that comes with our physical and emotional health. You could have all the money in the world, but if you're physically and emotionally unwell, um, how can you enjoy that financial wealth as much as you would if you were physically and emotionally well? So, the way that I approach it is I start with encouraging the person to really get to know themselves. So know and accept who you are. How are you wired neurologically? What are your personality strengths, gaps, and weaknesses? Build these into your business plan. Um, Build into your business plan both an acceptance of who you are and daily stretches to push you beyond complacency, beyond that comfort zone. And so my fundamental first principle is that person needs to develop a very strong relationship with themselves. They need to understand who they are, what their motivations are, what's going well in their relationships, what's not going so well, and what they really, really want. And one of the questions I ask people is, if you were now knew you were going to die
Yeah,
and you were looking back over your life, what would you regret and would you wish you had done that you have not yet
yeah.
done? And really try to get to the core of what is unique in that person that wants to be realized. Once we have that, then we can go to the things that you're already familiar with, like building knowledge, learning, and education from people who've succeeded in the field that you're interested in, um, networking with people who are going to help you progress, taking small, consistent, regular actions on a daily, weekly, monthly basis.
That's why you
And
build
keep,
routines, good
yes,
routines that
absolutely,
propel you
exactly what you're
forward.
teaching. Good routines and mindset. So the mind, what your mindset is and refreshing your mindset on a daily basis. So I have been learning because I came into the world in a family that supported me, and I had quite a lot of privilege, really, in spite of experiencing racism and homophobia and sexism and all of that. But really, I had quite a lot of privilege. I'm Cambridge educated. I've had chances at higher education. I've run my own business. I've never wanted for a meal, or a roof over my head.
We are singing from the same hymn book here because my approach is holistic as well. Is looking after every area of your health because there's no point taking a neck pain to a massage therapist when you're not looking at what's actually causing the stress that's giving you the neck pain. That
That's
that
right.
massage might give you a bit of a relief, but that's not going to solve the problem. So yeah, looking at it all holistically and treating every single area equally will then elevate you to the level that you want to be in on. But so looking at it from the risk versus security point of view, What if someone in their 50s, for example, has the expertise and the calling and the absolute desire to build something? And funny enough, most of my guests and probably listeners are in a similar sort of boat that we are in, but they sort of genuinely can't afford to get it wrong financially, specifically, I suppose. But is
Mm.
there a responsible way to take that leap? Or is that timing very important of what time in our lives we decide to take that leap?
Yes. I think this is a very interesting question because I'm a little bit in that situation now because my previous career came to an end much more abruptly than I had expected. I was expecting to kind of glide out of it into the next chapter. And because of world events totally outside of my control, um, my whole industry is basically imploding right now. And our pipeline of work just disappeared within 6 months, literally. Work that I had been doing, building up over 20, 30 years. There isn't a market for it anymore because of the political situation. And so now I'm having to create, because I can't afford to retire, now I'm having to create um, work, new business, um, and it needs to succeed. It needs
Absolutely.
to
There is
succeed.
no two ways about it. We need to push
There is
forward
no,
and,
there are no
and put our
about
word
it.
out there, don't we? So
Yes, that's right.
we look
That's
at
right.
people and ourselves like, how do we work this transition?
Yes. And I think for me, it's remembering that the fundamental nature, and this is where it is a philosophical question, the fundamental nature of life is groundless. Even quantum physics tells us so, that things that we think of as solid and dependable are really probability fields that can collapse at any time.
Mm,
So when you look at it that way, and that's true of you as well, that you are not a thing, you are not a destination, you are actually a process that is constantly unfolding. And it's constantly unfolding, sometimes in ways that feel quite painful, and other times in ways that feel very uplifting. And the one thing that I think has kept me really sane through some very, very challenging times has been actually my own spiritual practice. Now, I'm not saying this because I want people to be spiritual. Why I'm saying it is that it's created a regular touch point in my life, particularly my meditation practice, which is part of the good routine, the healthy routine, where I am able to confront and face with kindness instead of judgment all the things that are happening in me and to me on a daily basis, and recognize that through all the ups and downs and the big dives and the big exhilarating experiences, there is this awareness that is opening and opening and opening as I get older, and I'm less and less afraid of failure. I'm less and less afraid of not living up to other people's expectations. I'm less and less afraid um, of just being who I am. And that's where age is a real friend. And also the knowledge that I'm going to die is a real friend, because it creates an urgency to try and live as well as I possibly can. And I think if we open people up to this courageous way of meeting the unknown with curiosity and warmth, what'll happen is they will instinctively do the best thing because they're not trying to avoid something. They're not diverting themselves because they're avoiding something they're afraid of. They're facing it in full awareness, knowing they don't control everything. And
mm,
that's exactly the way I'm trying to lead my life now, to open to uncertainty, open to fear, open to the things I'm afraid of, open to failure,
absolutely. I was
and
just
keep
going to
putting
sort of,
myself there in front of people and saying, and smiling as well. It's like it's not all Yeah, when we get fearful, we can get very rigid, we can get very down. I'm not saying I don't get down. I'm a human being and I go up and down just like everybody else. But I know that there is this thread of intelligent awareness, which if I stay warm and non-judgmental towards myself, it will keep opening to the challenges.
Yeah. What I was going to do is sort of sum this up as a little micro action for people to take away, that while obviously, well, we both meditate, and there's a lot of people who meditate. It's not what we encourage necessarily to for people to do. Find your own way of connecting with your values and align with them. But I think what we can definitely encourage people to do is to have a conversation with themselves. Have a little think about, what are you waiting for? What is it you are waiting for? And then
Yes.
find your way forward and have the courage to take that leap, whatever leap it may need to be, to do something that will fulfill your life a lot more, and take that
Yes.
risk. Sometimes take that risk because things will work out.
Yes, and actually, I think if your actions come from authenticity, they are genuinely from who you truly are. What'll happen is you'll magnetize people who
Mm,
resonate with who you are. But if you don't put yourself out there and do that,
exactly.
you'll just sit and wonder why nobody comes to me. They're not coming to you because you're not putting yourself in front of them.
Absolutely. So
Uh-huh.
you're kind of choosing the security, and this is exactly the price you pay for not taking the risk for a better life or a different life that you actually want somewhere deep down in your mind.
That's right. And I think that's why, as you say, just knowing yourself, that conversation with yourself. So when I'm in Wealth of Life coaching, which is the brand that I'm launching right now, but also in my coaching that I've been doing for the last 20 more 30 years, I've developed this method where I say to people, as part of our coaching contract, um, you need to have a practice of a conversation with yourself. That could be
Mm,
journaling, it could be voice memos, it could be mind map. It doesn't matter what it is. I'm not dictating, but it is fundamental. You need the conversation with yourself, and that is a constant thread. You don't need to share it with anybody else, not even me. That's your conversation with yourself. And the other thing that I ask my coaching clients to do is to engage every day in a self-care practice. It doesn't,
absolutely.
and again, they will choose what that is, but I will keep asking them, how are you getting on with your self-care practice? How are you getting on with your journaling? Um, and this, just getting these fundamental things in place where, well, as you said, what are you waiting for? And nobody else is going to do this, not even your most beloved other half partner. They've got their own journey
Yes,
to engage.
absolutely.
They're
Yes.
not going to take care of yours. um, and so if you're always out there doing stuff and always out there trying to impress or please people or deliver stuff to them, that's great. But if you don't reserve any for yourself, it's all going to fall apart. And when it does, you won't have the resources to pick yourself up again.
Mm.
It always falls apart at some point, you know.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. But for you, you mentioned that you start with the end, and I don't think we mentioned it yet, but you are trained as a death doula alongside so many other things that you actually do. So working with mortality, does it actually change how you counsel people?
yes, absolutely. It does, because I haven't done a lot of work. I've just qualified as what's called a quietude practitioner, and that's an accredited professional certificate. So I can now take that and kind of work in hospices or
Okay.
hospital wards. And because I'm an interfaith minister, I could also work as a chaplain, working with people who are dying. I've conducted funerals. I've worked with grieving families. What it does for me is it indicates and emphasizes the preciousness of life. Um, and that's why, for me, daily contemplation of death is not morbid. It's actually a way of celebrating and enriching life, because it's impermanent.
Mm.
It's all the more to value the beautiful things in it, including you, the beautiful parts of you, the part that wants to sing or dance or write poetry or cook meals for people just because you love feeding them, or all of these beautiful things, or walk in nature. Or so I do think that I encourage my clients very much in that, because it's going to be gone in a flash. Like this conversation we're having right now, isn't it lovely? We're here. You're over there, I'm over here, but we're in the same space together somehow. When this is over, this is going to be a dream. We'll be having the dream of Ildiko was speaking to Razia, and Razia was speaking to Ildiko. It'll give us a warm feeling, perhaps, or some food for thought, but it will be a dream. It will be gone. And the only thing that's really, really present is present moment awareness, is me right here, right now, with this screen in front of me, with the temperature of the air and all of that. And that is the totality of life. The totality of life is lived in the present moment. So some part of your day needs to be devoted to dwelling right here, right now, and appreciating it, because it changes in an instant.
That's beautiful, Razia, and what a thing to close on. I was going to ask you for any bit of wisdom, but I think that is it. Thank you so much for joining me
You're very
today
welcome.
and
It's
talk about
such a pleasure. And this is such a great show. I hope everybody gets to see it, because you have such lovely conversations with people, and if nothing else, people will go away feeling uplifted.
And hopefully today they will feel a bit better equipped to choose between risk and security for a better, more uplifted life. Thank you very much, Razia.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
If this episode has shown you where weak health routines are costing you revenue, your next step is simple. Ask yourself this question: is your business draining your energy faster than it grows? If the answer might be yes, I invite you to book a conversation via the link in the show notes. If this conversation made you think, please subscribe, leave a comment, and listen again. If you would like more information on the topic or my guest, all information is in the show notes. Remember, your business will only ever be as healthy as you. Together, let's build routines to bank results.